Okay, so are you ready for this one? This deep dive, it's a little bit on the heavier side.
Yeah.
We're looking at a case from South Korea, and it was featured on the Rotten Mango YouTube channel.
Oh, yeah, Rotten Mango.
Have you seen that one?
I have, yeah.
And this is one of the stories that just kind of sticks with you.
Yeah.
It's
I think what makes it so disturbing is the contrast. You've got this young woman, Tung Yoo-jong, barely 23 years old,
Wow.
and she's behind this incredibly brutal crime, but then she makes all these rookie mistakes
Yeah.
that just don't add up. It's almost like she was studying a how-to manual on murder.
Wait, what do you mean by studying? Like she was actually researching how to commit the crime.
Exactly. It's chilling. For example, Rotten Mango highlighted this detail where Yoo-jong chose a very specific way to dispose of the body,
Okay.
a method she'd apparently seen in a documentary.
Really?
And it wasn't just a passing interest. She was deep into these online forums asking all these detailed questions about decomposition, and
Oh, God.
let's just say it got really dark.
Okay, yeah, that's not your typical true crime fan behavior.
No.
So who is the victim and what exactly happened?
So the victim was Hannah, a young woman in her 20s working as an English tutor.
Okay.
Yoo-jong, disguised as a middle schooler, lured Hannah to her apartment and stabbed her to death.
Oh, my God.
Then she dismembered the body and scattered the remains.
Dismembered. Okay, this is where I start to feel a little queasy.
And here's the truly unsettling part. The CCTV footage shows Yoo-jong calmly transporting the body parts, sometimes even skipping. It's almost as if she's completely detached from the horror of what she's done.
Skipping. Seriously. It's like something out of a nightmare. And you mentioned earlier that she made some mistakes.
Right. For someone who seemingly planned this so meticulously, she makes these baffling blunders. She even used a taxi to move the remains.
Wait, a taxi? How did that not raise any red flags?
It did. The driver noticed the suitcase felt much lighter on the second trip, and Yoo-jong was acting strangely.
Oh.
He ended up contacting the police, which ultimately led to her arrest. Can you imagine being that driver? You think you're just giving someone a ride, and then you end up entangled in something this horrific?
Absolutely not. The Rotten Mango video mentioned that the driver actually refused an award for his actions and quit his job.
Yeah.
He was completely traumatized by the experience.
Understandably so.
Yeah.
It's a testament to his courage that he was able to overcome that fear and do the right thing. He may have single-handedly prevented Yoo-jong from harming anyone else.
It's amazing how just a simple act of paying attention can have such a huge impact. Okay, so we've got this brutal crime and a killer who's clearly disturbed, but there's still the big question, why? What led Yoo-jong to this point?
To understand that, we need to go back to Yoo-jong's early life. She was raised solely by her grandfather and was described as a ghost almost invisible during her school years. Literally, there were reports of her spending entire school days hiding behind curtains, completely silent.
Behind curtains, that's odd. Like she was already trying to erase herself from the world.
It's certainly a strange detail, and it points to some deep-seated social anxiety, or perhaps something even more profound. And this pattern of isolation continued after graduation. For 5 years, she claimed to be studying for an exam she wasn't even qualified to take.
5 years? Was she just completely shut off from the world?
Pretty much. And then there's this bizarre incident where she applies for a golf caddy job.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine this. She goes to the interview and doesn't say a single word. Then when she's rejected, she flies into a rage.
Wow, talk about mixed signals. What was that all about?
Some psychologists suggest it could point to some simmering resentment, maybe even jealousy towards people who were succeeding in areas she struggled with. And remember, her victim, Hannah, was a successful English tutor.
So maybe there's a connection there, but then there's this whole true crime obsession angle. Was that just a morbid interest, or did it actually play a role in the murder?
That's where it gets truly fascinating.
Yeah.
What set Yoo-jong apart from your average true crime fan was her fixation on the killers themselves. She wanted to know what it felt like to take a life. The police actually found searches in her history for things like,
Hold on, I need a second to brace myself.
yeah, it's rough. She was looking up ways to induce paralysis, the most efficient methods of dismemberment, how to dispose of a body without leaving a trace. It was like she was creating a blueprint for murder.
It's one thing to be curious about true crime, but this is on a whole other level. So are we saying her obsession with these shows and documentaries actually pushed her to commit murder?
That's the million-dollar question. Some psychiatrists believe her true crime fascination was the primary motivator.
Okay.
While others are skeptical, they suggest she might be a pathological liar, using it as a convenient explanation to try and deflect responsibility.
A pathological liar. What makes him think that?
Well, it's partly due to her behavior after her arrest. She went through a series of lies trying to explain away the evidence. First, she claimed the remains were her baby, then that she was hired to dispose of the body. Each story more outlandish than the last.
So she's obsessed with true crime, fixated on killers, and now we're talking about potential pathological lying. This is a lot to unpack.
And it gets even more complicated when you factor in the fact that she only confessed after a tearful plea from her grandfather. It's almost like she was putting on a performance even then.
A performance? You mean like she was playing a role?
It's a possibility. And her apology to the media, it was chilling. Almost rehearsed, ending with this bizarre, unnatural thank you. It's like she was trying to control the narrative, even as she was facing the consequences of her actions.
Okay, now that's just creepy. So where do we go from here? How do you even begin to make sense of someone like this?
That's where the psychopathy test comes in. Initially, she scored a 15, which is above average, but not necessarily indicative of psychopathy. But on the second evaluation...
Hold on, a second evaluation? Why would they do that?
Sometimes, especially in high-profile cases, a second evaluation is conducted to ensure accuracy. And in Yuxiong's case, that second SOAR, well, it changed everything.
What do you mean? How different could it be?
On the second test, her score jumped to 28.
28. Wow, I'm no expert, but that sounds bad, right?
It is. To give you some context, that puts her in the same range as some of the most notorious serial killers in history.
That's bone-chilling. Those are numbers you usually associate with, like, Ted Bundy or John Wayne Gacy.
Yeah.
Not a seemingly quiet young woman.
Right.
It just reinforces how appearances can be so deceiving.
It's a stark reminder that evil doesn't always wear a mask. It can lurk beneath the surface, hidden in plain sight. And that brings us to a really interesting aspect of this case that Rottenmango touched on, the phenomenon of hikikomori.
Right, you mentioned that earlier. It's not a direct comparison, but it does make you think, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Hikikomori, for those who are unfamiliar, is a term used to describe a social phenomenon primarily in Japan, where individuals, often young adults, withdraw completely from society.
Okay.
Isolating themselves in their homes for months, sometimes even years.
So like extreme hermits. But like in the middle of these bustling cities.
Exactly. And while experts believe the causes are complex and vary from person to person, it often involves a combination of social pressures, anxiety, and the allure of technology that allows them to exist in this virtual world.
Yeah.
Detached from reality.
And you're not saying that Yuxiong was a hikikomori, but...
But her early life, the years spent behind curtains, the isolation after graduation, even the silence during that job interview, it does raise questions about the role that extreme isolation might have played in shaping her psyche.
It's like she was already primed for a life disconnected from the real world, and then her obsession with true crime provided this like twisted outlet for those dark impulses.
It's a chilling thought. And while the vast majority of hikikomori are not violent, the potential for mental health issues to fester in isolation is a serious concern.
It makes you wonder, had someone intervened earlier, reached out to Yuxiong during those years of isolation, could things have turned out differently?
It's impossible to say for sure, but it does highlight the importance of recognizing the warning signs of social withdrawal and the need for early intervention.
Okay, back to the true crime obsession. Rottenmango mentioned that she was particularly fixated on certain types of cases, right?
Yes. Yuxiong wasn't interested in the whodunit aspect of true crime. She was drawn to stories of meticulous planning killers who outsmarted the authorities, who exerted ultimate control over their victims.
Oh, wow.
It was almost like she was studying them, looking for inspiration.
So not only was she researching how to commit a murder, but she was also looking for a model, like a blueprint, for the perfect crime.
And that's what's so disturbing. It wasn't just a passive interest, it was an active pursuit of knowledge, this twisted form of self-education with deadly consequences.
It's like she was building a fantasy world in her mind, a world where she could be the ultimate puppet master controlling life and death.
And that level of detachment, that lack of empathy for her victims, is a hallmark of psychopathy. It's the chilling ability to compartmentalize, to separate yourself from the emotional consequences of your actions.
We've talked about the psychopathy test, the high score, but can you break that down a little more? What exactly does it measure?
So the psychopathy test, also known as the PCLR, assesses a range of personality traits and behaviors
Okay.
associated with psychopathy. Things like superficial charm, a grandiose sense of self-worth, pathological lying, lack of remorse, impulsivity, and of course, criminal versatility.
The criminal versatility, that sounds ominous.
It refers to the ability to engage in a wide range of criminal activities without being detected.
Oh, wow.
And in Yuxiong's case, her meticulous planning, the way she evaded suspicion for so long, it all points to a high level of criminal sophistication.
It's like she was playing a game, this deadly game, and she was determined to win.
And that's what makes this case so unsettling. It challenges our perception of who we think is capable of such acts. It's easy to imagine a monster as someone who looks and acts the part, but Yu Zhang defied those expectations. She was young, seemingly quiet, unassuming.
And yet she was capable of unimaginable cruelty. It's a sobering reminder that evil can wear many faces.
It is. And it forces us to confront this uncomfortable reality that we can never truly know what lurks beneath the surface, the dark thoughts and impulses that may be hidden in plain sight.
This whole conversation is making me look at everyone around me a little differently.
It's understandable to feel that way. This case shakes our sense of security, our belief that we can identify danger. But it's important to remember that cases like this are thankfully rare. The vast majority of people are not capable of such acts.
That's reassuring, I guess. But it still leaves me with a sense of unease, knowing that someone like Yu Zhang could exist, could blend in so seamlessly.
It's a reminder that we need to be vigilant to trust our instincts when something feels wrong. And it highlights the importance of mental health awareness, of recognizing the signs of social isolation, and seeking help before those dark thoughts turn into actions.
Speaking of actions, Rotten Mango mentioned that Yu Zhang seemed perfectly content in prison. She was eating well, sleeping well, showing no signs of remorse. It's almost like she felt a sense of relief, like a weight had been lifted.
That's one of the most disturbing aspects of this case. Her lack of remorse, her apparent indifference to the suffering she caused, is a chilling reminder of the profound disconnect that can exist in the minds of those who commit such heinous acts.
It's almost like she achieved what she set out to do, and now she's at peace. Which brings up a terrifying thought. What if she hadn't been caught?
That's a question that haunts this entire case, isn't it?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the experts seem to agree on the answer.
Which is?
Given her high psychopathy score and the calculated nature of her crime, they believe it's highly likely Yu Zhang would have killed again.
So the taxi driver who noticed the change in the suitcase weight and alerted the authorities.
He may have unknowingly saved countless lives. His actions were a testament to the power of observation, the courage to speak up when something feels wrong.
It's incredible to think that one person's attentiveness could have such a profound ripple effect, but it still leaves us with this unsettling reality. Yu Zhang is behind bars, but the potential for darkness, the capacity for evil, it's still out there.
That's true. And this case serves as a stark reminder that we can never be truly complacent, that evil can manifest itself in the most unexpected ways.
So where do we go from here? How do we process this information, this unsettling glimpse into the darkest corners of the human psyche?
It's not easy. It challenges our assumptions, forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about the world and our place in it. But it also presents an opportunity.
An opportunity? For what?
An opportunity to learn, to grow, to become more aware of the subtle signs of trouble, to foster empathy and understanding, and perhaps most importantly, to use this knowledge as a catalyst for positive change.
What do you mean by positive change? I'm not sure I see the silver lining in all of this.
It's not about finding a silver lining. It's about recognizing that even in the face of unimaginable darkness, we have a choice. We can choose to succumb to fear and despair, or we can choose to use this knowledge to build a better world.
A better world? But how? What can we possibly do to prevent something like this from happening again?
It starts with awareness. By understanding the factors that contribute to violence, the warning signs of social isolation, the dangers of unchecked obsession, we can be better equipped to identify and intervene before it's too late.
So it's about education, about being proactive, about looking out for each other.
Exactly. It's about fostering a culture of empathy and support, where mental health is prioritized, where social isolation is addressed, and where we recognize that everyone has the potential for both darkness and light.
It's a tall order, but I suppose even the smallest steps in the right direction can make a difference.
Absolutely. And it's a journey we must all undertake together. Because in the end, the only way to combat darkness is with light.
That's a powerful thought. But before we get too philosophical, I have to ask, given everything we've learned about Yu Zhang, the psychopathy, the lack of remorse, is there any hope for her? Is rehabilitation even possible in a case like this?
That's the question that continues to spark debate, even among the experts who have studied this case extensively. And the answer, unfortunately, is far from simple.
What do you mean? Is there a chance she could change? Could one day re-enter society as a reformed individual?
The nature of psychopathy is such that true remorse, genuine empathy for others, is often absent. And without that foundation, the path to rehabilitation becomes incredibly challenging.
So are we saying she's destined to remain a danger to society even behind bars?
It's a difficult truth to confront, but it's a possibility we have to consider. While there are therapies and treatments that can help manage some of the more dangerous behaviors associated with psychopathy.
But there's no guarantee of a cure.
Exactly. The potential for change exists, but it's a long and uncertain road.
It's a tough pill to swallow knowing that someone who committed such a horrific act could potentially walk free one day without any real transformation, without truly understanding the gravity of their actions.
It speaks to the limitations of our justice system, its inability to fully address the complexities of the human mind.
It's unsettling to think about. But I suppose that's the nature of true crime, isn't it? It forces us to confront the uncomfortable, the unexplainable, the dark side of humanity that we'd often rather ignore.
And in that confrontation, in that willingness to delve into the darkness, we may just find a glimmer of hope. A hope that by understanding the roots of evil, we can work towards preventing it from taking root in the first place.
It's a long shot, I know, but it's a shot worth taking.
Yeah.
Because if we can prevent even one tragedy like this from happening, then all of this exploration, all of this introspection will have been worth it.
This is heavy stuff, for sure, and it makes me wonder about this whole true crime phenomenon in general.
Yeah.
I mean, we're so fascinated by these stories, but does that fascination make us more or less empathetic, you know?
Right.
Are we desensitized to the violence, or does it help us understand the darker side of human nature?
That's a question I think every true crime enthusiast has to grapple with.
Yeah.
There's no easy answer, right or wrong response.
It's a very personal journey, and I think it's crucial to engage with this content thoughtfully, critically, and with a keen awareness of its potential impact on our own psyche.
It's like anything else, right? Moderation is key.
Exactly.
A little bit of true crime can be fascinating, even educational.
Right.
But too much, and you start to see the world through a very different lens.
Precisely. It's about finding that delicate balance. We have to remember that these are real-life horrors. Real-life victims, real-life families, forever scarred by these events.
Yeah.
This isn't just entertainment. It's a window into the darkest aspects of human behavior.
And that window can be pretty addictive.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we're so drawn to the mystery, the suspense, the psychology of it all.
Right.
But we can't lose sight of the human cost.
Absolutely. And it's a reminder that that line between fascination and obsession can be perilously thin.
Yeah.
We have to be mindful of our own consumption, our own motivations.
Right.
And just be honest with ourselves about why we're drawn to these stories.
This deep dive has definitely made me reevaluate my own relationship with true crime.
Yep.
It's a genre I've always been intrigued by.
Right.
But this case, it's kind of a game changer for me. It's a stark reminder that sometimes the monsters are real.
And sometimes those monsters are created,
Yeah.
shaped by this confluence of factors we may never fully understand.
Right.
The case of Tong Yujong is a tragedy on so many levels, and it's a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the potential for darkness that resides within us all.
It's a case that will stay with me, no doubt about it. It's
Yeah.
unsettling, to say the least.
Yeah.
But it's also a case that compels me to look deeper, to question more, and to really just strive to be a force for good in a world that can often feel pretty overwhelmingly dark.
And it's a case that challenges us to do better as individuals, as communities, and as a society, to foster empathy, to prioritize mental health, to create spaces where everyone feels seen, heard, and valued,
Right.
because ultimately that's the only way to combat the darkness.
You've given us a lot to think about today.
Oh, good.
This deep dive has been illuminating, insightful, and honestly a little bit terrifying.
It's a tough one.
But I think that's the point, isn't it?
Yeah,
To confront the uncomfortable,
absolutely.
to explore those shadows so that we can better understand the light.
It's not always easy to face the darker aspects of human nature, but it's essential if we genuinely want to create a better world.
Well said. I think that's a good place to leave it for today. To our listeners, thank you for joining us on this unsettling journey. We hope this deep dive has challenged your thinking and left you with a renewed sense of purpose to make the world a little bit brighter, a little bit safer, a little bit kinder.
Stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, stay connected.
Until next time, take care.